Okay, I know exactly what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, that was a really, really interesting Grand Prix, Law. But then also that this isn't the ladder, it is art. I've been at the Austrian Grand Prix in person. If you've not been paying attention to the vlogs I've been making, I'll leave a link down to it in the pinned comment. It had plenty of winners, losers, and a lot of them meh. So we are still going to be doing that tradition. But do forgive me if it's a little bit more raw. But I think it's safe to say that McLaren were the absolute winners of this Grand Prix, because throughout the entire weekend, there was no stopping them, in particular Lando Norris. Now, credit where credit is due here. After what happened at the Canadian Grand Prix, this is the kind of result that we needed to see from Norris, because this is a very good track for him. It's where he got his first podium. He was so close to winning it last year. This was a real endeavor. And not only that, there were moments when Piastri could have easily taken it. He didn't fumble. He held his nerve, and it was Oscar who made the mistake. And the beauty of all of this is that everyone remained calm and the strategies went off without a hitch, save for Piastri having a sticky front left tyre that took a couple of seconds extra, and Franco Colapinto taking him off into the grass. And we'll talk more about that in the Alpine section later in the video. They are not winners, which is going to make this championship battle all the more interesting, because Norris, in this expert Grand Prix victory, has narrowed the gap to 15 points, and Max Verstappen got a DNF. He's now no longer figuring. It is definitely now the two McLaren boys, which for Lando is absolutely splendido. And it does take away a lot of the demons that have been surrounding him in the last couple of weeks, that people thought that he just couldn't hack a championship battle with either Verstappen or Piastri. Well, he was able to do it. He can now put all of the stuff that happened last year with Verstappen at turn 3 behind him, and he came out of it on top. Not only against the Dutchman, effectively at one of the Dutchman's home races, because the Orange Army was strong over there in turn 6 and 7, but also against the Australian, which everyone, including myself, really rated in terms of, well, you know, being a championship contender. But I am more than happy to say that even though my boy pushed him to the absolute edge to be within a couple of seconds at Lando's strong track, which is saying something, ultimately he didn't do it. Norris held out, he didn't bottle it. This was a non-bottling event, so good job, Lando, well done. Now it's going to be Silverstone, and I'm really interested to see what he can do there, because, well, there's the Lando stand there, and apparently the curbs around Stowe will be painted fluorescent yellow and black, so if there's any place that Lando could do back-to-back victories, it's going to be this one. Actually, having no Lando is it's giving me a lot of freedom in terms of movement. Maybe I should... No, I wouldn't do that to you. No, you'd crumble. But one person who didn't crumble was Liam Lawson, because not many people were talking about it. And I know that many people are going to be coming after me in the comments after my video the other day saying that Red Bull could drop Liam Lawson. I said could. And one of the mission statements in that video I said was one thing he needs to do immediately after the Lindblad FP1 thing in Silverstone is to beat Hadjar. Well, Liam beat Hadjar, and not only did he beat him comprehensively and with style. Most importantly, with a one-stop strategy, as far as I can tell. And yeah, this is a raw report. I don't have all the facts and figures because, well, my internet access wasn't that great, and I'm just going on what I was able to scramble on the bus ride home, well, to the hotel. But starting off with a qualifying that he described as, yeah, really cool, mate, he then actually held on to P6, and Lawson was directly opposite where I was sat in the grandstand, and it was a simple, just procedure. Even though Fernando Alonso was giving him a run for his money all the way to the bitter end, and there were moments when Liam could have almost gone after George Russell because Mercedes were having a good time, but also he's now in the double figures, and he's now locked in Racing Bulls in 6th place in the constructors. And considering that Williams are really being riddled with unreliability issues right now, and Racing Bulls are nailing it, I'm almost thinking they could make a good bid for that dream 5th place that Franz Tost envisioned years ago. And funnily enough, Franz Tost was actually at the event. And oh yeah, out-qualifying Verstappen effectively on home turf of one of the 3 main races that the Dutch fans come out in their droves. I mean, yes, of course, the Verstappen crash helped him a little bit, and it did take Max out of the equation. But as I said many times, Points mean prizes. And points came out in absolute spades for Sauber. Once again, this is just proving Sauber, this is not a fluke. They brought yet more upgrades to Austria. I told you to look out for Gabi at this track, and he delivered. There was a brief period where he was within 2 seconds of Russell, and he's going, blimey, a Sauber right behind me. Toto, what do I do? I'm not prepared for this eventuality. Oh. And Hulkenberg, what have we got to say about Hulkenberg? Due to the mistiming in Q1, Hulkenberg started at the back, and he did what Oliver Behrman's been impressively doing this year, a burn from the stern campaign. Thanks to strategy and overall pace and competitiveness with the upgrades of his own, he was within a few seconds of Bortoleto. And it makes you wonder, had he qualified, he might have made the top 5 again. And that would have just shown that what we saw in Barcelona wasn't an absolute fluke. There is something to this car, and we need to see more of it. And based on what Bortoleto has been saying, Silverstone might be just as prosperous. And if it is, then Sauber could easily find themselves surging themselves up the ranks, because sure, they're still ninth in the constructors, but it's all to play for right now. The teams left Alpine in the dust. They absolutely have. And there's just 3 points between Sauber in 9th and Haas in 7th. One good result and one so-so result for the others could change everything. Absolutely everything. And this race was the turning point for Gabriel, because no one really paid much attention to him. Even though Bortoleto is managed by Fernando, Alonso was not going to be giving him an easy ride. That old dog was not going to be giving him any handouts because, well, he almost ran him off the road. There was Piastri and Norris right there, and Fernando was just like not having any of it. He was trying to unlap himself in front of Lando, and I'm, gee, what are you doing? I mean, is that revenge for all the bad years with McLaren? He was doing desperate moves to keep in front of Bortoleto, and it's that was epic, those last couple of laps, because those two just didn't care that the leaders were lapping them. And then right at the end, it was all fine. It was absolute gravy for them. They did embrace, and it was like almost like on the helmet, and it's like, did you imagine what just happened? And I bet that if Bortoleto had overtaken Alonso, Fernando would have bought him dinner. Sorry, apologies for the over-enthusiasm here, but spending days listening to Davide Valsecchi on the commentary, it does rub off on you. But Fernando Alonso in of himself, I mean, he's a winner in his own right as well, because, well, it's the Aston Martin. And he's now, I think, brought the points tally. It's now level pegging with Lance Stroll. Sorry, Fernando still got it. And what he was able to do with Bortoleto, the ducking and diving, the car control, in amidst being blue flagged all over the place, even though he's as old as time, he's still able to put that car where he wants it to and not crash the damn thing. And it was also, like with Lawson, on a one-stopper, because Alonso just missed out on Q3. But getting 7th place, it didn't really matter. It meant that he had some more tyres, even though he barely used them. That one stopper worked, and it just showed that, in theory, even though it was really hot conditions, the one stop worked, and it worked for Alonso. Ferrari are also winners here as well, because out of all of the teams behind McLaren, Ferrari looked the most composed. Their upgrades, which I thought were coming for Silverstone, but they came for here, did work. Both Ferraris in the top 4, and they remained in the top 4. Okay, Charles did fall back 1 place, but that was against a McLaren, so that was to be expected. But Charles held his own. Lewis did fall back quite a bit. He wasn't really figuring in anything, but in a way, it was just something that equaled his result from Imola. There wasn't really much going on in terms of drama, except that we did have a little bit of a radio snafu or a little bit of discontent when Lewis was saying, I don't want to stop right now. These tyres are good. These are fine. So he is experiencing, Lewis, the problems with Ferrari just not really getting the memo in terms of preferences, in that they really do rely on the data. That's the only quibble, really. And out of the Mercedes Red Bull group that they find themselves in, they're now on top. This is, I think, their best joint result in a full Grand Prix, and I think it's something that is now a tour de force, and it might be the thing that keeps Fred Vasseur his job for another year, because Lewis is not that far off the podium, Charles Leclerc has gotten yet another one, and even though this might lead to the development struggles in what to do for this year specifically, whether to continue development or not, this is still something that Ferrari will just take with both hands. But this was a weekend where there was no drama, there was no problem with the car, they weren't slow, they were competitive. Even though they were going to be playing second fiddle to McLaren, but right now that doesn't matter. They just want to get their eggs in one basket and get one over Mercedes, and get one especially over at Red Bull at their home track. So that's all that Ferrari cares about right now. And then we get to the meh section, and the meh section starts off with one George Russell. Now, sure, 5th place, it's another top 5 finish, it's consistent points, and as far as the championship is concerned, if he wants to get one over one Max Verstappen, then he's done so. 10 more points than Max, he's now got himself that little bit closer to P3 in the championship, which might be the best that anyone who isn't dressed in papaya can hope for. But there's also a caveat to that. I believe he was this close to being lapped, or he was lapped. And going from the Canadian win that was so emphatic and showing that Mercedes might have turned a corner, and then going to be absolutely nowhere in terms of going for a podium, that's a major reality check, and I don't think Toto would appreciate that. And that wasn't the worst of their issues. There clearly was something wrong with this car in terms of it not being competitive at all. I mean, that would explain why Bortoleto got within a few seconds of him. I mean, can you imagine that? The Sauber overtaking Mercedes? That's absolutely insane. Although ironic, because Sauber did start their F1 career with Mercedes, so not a good day for him. I mean, it was fine, but considering the rumours about Max and Mercedes just will not go away, and they're even intensifying with all the cryptic things Toto is saying, I think he's going to be coming away from this weekend with, like, not much to be happy about other than the fact that he scored more than Max. And then I will put Haas in the meh section. I wouldn't call them absolute winners here, because Ocon, I think over the radio, was still saying that there needs to be more pace found in this car. And it was very much explained with him being out in Q1. And Behrman got into Q2 and they ultimately got to 10th and 11th, which is not too bad for a midfield team. But when you're considering that Lawson scored way more than them and that Sauber scored way more than them, even though they're hanging on to 7th, it's a very, very close drop from 7th to 9th. There's 3 points in it. And now Racing Bulls have got an advantage. Now the second driver, Liam Lawson, the refugee from Red Bull, has suddenly decided that, oh, I like the car now. And so therefore, it means that Haas needs to find that pace which Ocon was talking about. Even though they like the environment that they're in, Ollie and Esteban, and Behrman doesn't really have a problem with the car, it simply just doesn't have the pace. Had the Saubers not been there, then this might have been a pretty decent weekend for Haas, but, well, the other Ferrari-powered team were there, and they're upgrading much faster than anyone else in the midfield. And yeah, I was thinking about putting Isaac Hadjar in the losers, but ultimately, P12 in the grand scheme of things, it's just a meh, or something like that. It was just scruffy, it wasn't great, it was still 12th, it was reasonable, but it was nothing in comparison to Liam. But it's like the skin of its teeth, because the Racing Bulls team is still like the 6th fastest team, or maybe 7th fastest team. So it is within the natural area where Racing Bulls would expect to be, but then again, you've got to consider that we had a couple of retirements as well. And, oh, yeah, it's just you know what? No, I'm going to have him starting the losers. It was a very forgettable time of it, and there's not really much else to say with Hadjar. It was just one unfortunate time where Lawson just simply outshone him. It was just scruffy. It was meh. I think that's maybe why I described it as being meh, because there wasn't really much to report about. It was just, he wasn't fast enough. There you go. And now we get to the losers, and at their home track too. Yuki Tsunoda and Max Verstappen, I would say, were the biggest losers here because, well, Max barely got to turn 3, the turn that caused all the problems from last year because of contact with Kimi Antontelli. And with Yuki Tsunoda, well, he qualified 18th, and according to statistics that the last 5 races, his qualifying performance has been the worst of any Red Bull driver in history. He then had contact with Colapinto in that he initiated it at the very same place that Hamilton and Albon made contact a few years ago, and he got a 10-second penalty at the home track. If there's any place that Yuki needed to perform, it was the home track, and he didn't do it. and Max Verstappen, you would have expected him to have blown his top, but he didn't. This was a incident where he did utter an expletive, but it was relatively passive. He just went, I'm out, and it was a... I mean, of course, he would have been probably on notice. And now the Grand Prix has passed, and he's not been in trouble with the stewards. He's not been told he's a naughty boy. He now will have 2 penalty points expiring, so he's now down to 9. So there is a little bit more wiggle room to be had. But I don't expect him to be really all that aggressive because, according to him in qualifying, the car was just simply not there. The lap fell apart, and even though many people thought that he could have just had time to go around again after Gasly's span in Q3, he simply just didn't do it. He gave up, he aborted the lap, thinking that there wasn't really much point. So you already had a driver who was down in the dumps, and he did make up a place. I think he got up to 6th before he made contact with Kimi. But even then, it was probably not going to be much of a good day in the office. He would have been behind the Ferraris. He might have been able to duke it out with Russell a little bit because he was managing George's brake temperatures, whereas Max had a fully functional car. And Max wasn't even able to do that because now this is meaning that Red Bull scored no points at their home circuit. I'm sorry if I keep mentioning, but it's a really big deal. Red Bull are now very much in P4 in the constructors. They are now, I think, 47 points behind Mercedes in 3rd. And I believe this is his first full-blown retirement, Max's, in 31 races since the Australian Grand Prix of last year. And another thing that had been broken and crashed down hard was Kimi Antontelli. After that podium in Canada, along with the win, Mercedes completely fell to bits. It was a miserable weekend for them because they weren't even figuring in trying for a podium with George, and with Kimi, he locked up and ultimately tagged the defending world champion, the guy who, according to many reports, will be his teammate next year, if the rumours are led to be true. Alleged rumours. And it's almost like Kimi is getting the cardinal sin of Formula 1 out early before they're actually teammates. And yeah, Max has no bad blood toward the young Italian, saying, according to journalists in reports, that, oh, all drivers make that mistake. And Verstappen has actually been on Antonelli's side many times, saying that he should be allowed to make mistakes because he is so young and he is going to make them like he did when he was a young lad. So he is actually being very defensive of Antonelli, and I think that is a really good tact for the Dutchman, showing that he isn't just going to fly off the handle every single time, that he is thinking rationally here. But one thing to think rationally is that the last few races, apart from Canada, have actually been really bad and a big wake-up call, a smack in the face for the young Italian. And it all started, ironically, at Imola, effectively his home circuit. And after that, it's been a really rough ride for him and Mercedes, save for Montreal. But that now might be a false dawn unless Silverstone comes round again and the temperatures don't turn out to be so bad. And then there's Lance Stroll. There really isn't much to be said. He was simply nowhere in comparison to Alonso, which is not going to be good news to the likes of Adrian Newey when he's developing next year's car. If Lance can't provide him good feedback, then I can imagine Newey going, I can't work with this lad, I really can't. There's nothing more to say because, as I said earlier, Fernando's making the car dance, whereas Lance... But the other two big losers are Williams and Alpine. I'll start with Williams first because their car went off with a big bang. Carlos Sainz not only stalling on the grid, as I saw from my own 2 eyes, but also then when he got to the pit lane, his brakes caught fire, both of them, and the smoke continued to billow for many minutes. We all thought there was going to be a full-blown explosion. That certainly would have made his race day a little bit more interesting, Carlos's, because this is yet another Q1 exit, and then he didn't even get to start the race to try and make up some ground, because as we saw with Hulkenberg, he could actually get that car into the points. There might have been an opportunity for Williams. And then Albon, he had a fantastic start. Before I knew it, he went up from 12th to 6th. And with the Williams, he might have actually been able to stay there. But then, according to Vowles, there was some sort of unexplained fault, which might be explained by the time this video comes out. But I really hope it's not a powertrain issue, a third one in a row where they had to retire the car early, because this is getting really bad. That car may have some pace every now and again, especially with the tie driver, but if it just can't get it to the end of the race, then what's the point? And that huge lead that they had over the rest of the midfield is starting to erode, and Racing Bulls is pulling back in. They're now like 23 points behind Williams, I think, and that can easily be taken out more and more and more if Williams continue to not finish races, or have a couple of drivers who don't make it into Q3, and therefore their work is made easy. And if Lawson has suddenly arrived and he's able to get Q3 performances, and then Hadjar comes back and these two can get points finishes, both of them, and now Sauber are in the frame, and then Haas gets some upgrades, Williams could be in some trouble here, but I don't think they would really care. I mean, they've sucked good success and they want more, but they shouldn't really lose focus on what they're doing for next year, which I think they are doing. But we are also seeing that there are limitations to this year's car, and it did result in them not really figuring much at all, because yeah, Alex had a great start, but what's the point if you don't make it to the finish? And then to wrap things up, Alpine. My goodness, there wasn't really much to be said with Pierre, because even though he did start off in Q3 P10, he even started on the softs and he was looking likely to make some names after inheriting 6th, I think, for a brief time when Albon did retire. He then just completely fell down the order, saying on the radio that there was no pace in the car, that he just had nothing to give, and eventually he was falling into the clutches of Franco Colapinto, who, sure, he started in 14th, he did make some progress, he wasn't that far behind Gasly in the end of the day in terms of pure pace, but unfortunately, Colapinto wasn't right there to then take charge of the Alpine team and then drag them up to maybe challenging for a point, which at a brief moment he was able to do. But Franco's chances of trying to get for the top 10 were scuppered by Tsunoda, because that was an unfortunate tap. But then the goodwill toward Franco did dissipate in my mind when he forced Piastri off the track completely and nearly ended his race. And I'm sorry, Colapinto fans, I like your kid, I really do. I think he's got potential. No. I would understand if it was an accident, okay, but that could have easily led to both of them being retired. Had Piastri not kept that car pointing straight, had spun, it would have taken them both out. And this is not the first time these two have tangled because of an Abu Dhabi, although it was Piastri's fault that time. But yeah, Franco did get let off lightly. It was a 5-second time penalty instead of a 10-second one, but the damage was done. Had that not happened, Piastri might have gotten a little bit closer to Lando, maybe in DRS territory. Franco, I think, did have moments where he was handling that car better than Gasly, because Gasly was losing his temper. There's a lot riding on the Frenchman, and there's just simply nothing in that car. There might be for a few laps, but then eventually it all fades away toward the end of the race, and then ultimately, Alpine are definitely the guys holding the wooden spoon, 15 points behind Sauber. This is falling apart. This is falling apart now badly. Who's going to want to buy this team? Unless I had a brief morbid moment, if Hyundai, if they were interested in buying their way into Formula One, imagine if they bought Alpine. Cyril Abitboul down in Teams Enston. Oh, the irony. The guy that would have bought the team from them is the guy they kicked out not that long ago. Christian Horner will be absolutely furious. But one thing I think will definitely not make you furious are my explorations of the Austrian Grand Prix itself in 4 easy peasy vlogs. To watch them from day one itself, watch this video next, straight after this one. And don't worry, in the next video the ladder will be back.